All right, so our application is complete. Now we're going to deploy, and we're going to use a platform as a service called Heroku, which is an application hosting platform. So you can host Node apps, Ruby, PHP, Python, all types of applications. It doesn't give you like a shell where you can log in and you can just install whatever you want, like databases and stuff like that. It's just for hosting. So where we are using a cloud database, Heroku is a perfect place for us to host our application, and it's free. So there's a free tier that's fine for development and even some production. So let's go ahead and log. Well, if you don't have an account, sign up. But I'm going to log in, and once you log in, it'll show you a page like this. I have a couple other apps here, and any app you create is going to show here. Now you also need to install the Heroku CLI. So if you just search for Heroku CLI and click on the first link here. So if you're on a Mac, you can use the installer, or Homebrew. Windows, you can use the installer, and then there's some installation instructions for Mac as well. Linux as well. All right, so get that installed, and once you have it installed, just to check, you can do Heroku -- version, and you can see I have it installed. My version might be a little older. Now, the way that we deploy to Heroku is we log in through the command line and then we push with Git. However, there's some stuff that we need to do beforehand. Now, when you deploy a full stack app like this, you don't run React the way we've been doing it. We've been using the dev server, the built-in dev server. What we need to do is compile all of our assets by running npm run build. So if I cd into my client and I run npm run build, it's going to create a production build, and it's going to put it in a folder called dist. So just one second, and if we look in client, I'm sorry, not dist, I'm thinking of Vue.js. It creates a folder called build, and if we look in that folder, this has like the index.html. This is what will actually be loaded. So we need to direct our server to load that index.html file inside the build folder. Okay, now I'm just going to delete this build folder for now. We don't need it. Just wanted to show you that. So let's go to our server.js. This is basically the entry point for everything for our server. And I'm going to go under the routes, the API routes, and let's say we want to serve static assets in production, basically serve React in production. So we want to check the environment, make sure it's production. So we'll say process.env.node_env is equal to production. Then we're going to first set a static folder. And that static folder is going to be the client build folder. It's going to be the static assets that React builds for us. So let's say app.use, and we can say express.static, and then pass in here client/build. So that sets the static folder. Now we're going to create a route. We're going to say app.get anything. Okay, so asterisk, app.get anything that's not these. That's why it's important to put this below these routes here. So anything that's not these, then let's do request response. And what we want to do here is response send file. And we're actually going to use the Node.js path module. It's just a default Node.js module just to deal with file paths. So we can say require path, and we just want to load that index.html, and I'm going to use the path.resolve method to do that. So in here we just pass in _dir name, which just means look at the current directory, then look in client, then look in build, and then load index.html. Okay, so that's all it's going to do. All it's doing is checking the environment. If it's in production, load a static folder, the React build folder, and then have this route so that if it's hit, so if we hit the home page, it's going to load the index.html, the inside the client build folder. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now another thing we want to do is for our config. If we look in config, we have this default JSON. This is for development. The way that the config module works, or package works, is when you go into production, you create a production.json. Okay, and that's what it's going to look at. Now I'm just going to copy what we have in default, but usually you'd have a different database, probably a different secret, different API keys for development and production, but in this case I'm using the same thing. So I'm just going to create a production.json. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about here before we try to deploy is our build script. Now, there's a couple ways we could do it. We could run npm run build in our client folder every single time we want to deploy, or we could actually build it on the server using something called a post build. So that's what I want to do, is do it on the server after we deploy. So in our package.json that's in the root, so the server package.json, we're going to create another script here. And we're going to call this Heroku. It's very important to call it this, Heroku-post build. And then in here, we're going to say npm underscore config underscore production, and we're going to set it to false. Because in order to run the build, the environment needs to temporarily be out of production. Okay, so once we do that, we're going to run npm install in the client folder. So we want to do -- prefix client. Okay, that will install all the React dependencies. And then we want to do a double ampersand and then npm run build. Okay, we want to do that in the client folder. So again, -- prefix client. So it'll install the client-side dependencies, and it will run npm run build, which will create that build folder, which is going to be our static folder, and it will load that index.html. Hopefully, if everything goes all right. So let's save this, and I think we're ready. Hopefully, we don't have any issues. Now, down here, you want to make sure that you're not in the client folder like I am right now. So I'm going to cd ... back into the root here. And let's just make this bigger. So from here, we're going to run Heroku login. And it's going to just open up your browser. Just go ahead and log in. And it'll tell you can go back to your CLI. And once we're logged in, we can run Heroku create. Now it's going to create an app it's going to create this domain name. Mine is Fathomless Badlands. Yours will be something different. And if you go to your dashboard and reload, you'll see that app right here. We haven't deployed yet. We just created it. So next step is to, before we do anything, we need to basically update our Git repository. Now, I've already done git init. If you haven't, go ahead and do that. Initialize a Git repository. I've been making commits all along, but what you want to do now is git add all. And then let's do git commit -m and then a comment. I'm going to say prepare for deploy. Okay, so now my local Git repository is up to date, and now I can push it to Heroku. Now I need to add Heroku as a remote repository, so what we need to do is go into the application that was created, go to deploy, and right here you'll see this git remote command. You want to just copy that, and then we want to run that, and that will add Heroku as a remote repository. So now we should be able to push to Heroku by just saying git push Heroku, and we want to push to the master branch. And what should happen is it should deploy. It should also run that post build script that's going to build out all of our React static assets and create the build folder. Okay, that client build folder. And then our Node.js app, or our back end, is going to load that index.html file. And our application should work. Fingers crossed, because a lot of things can go wrong in deployment. Okay, so it says creating an optimized production build. So we know that npm run build was actually ran, and it was run on the server. We don't have to worry about it. Okay, we get build succeeded. That's a good sign. Launching. Okay, so we should be good. Now we can either go to this URL, or we could just do Heroku open, and that will open up our browser. Okay, so the issue here, I know exactly what it is. In our server.js, I left this. So basically what's happening is it's looking at this route and loading this before it's doing any of this other stuff. So I'm going to just completely get rid of that and save. Now, in order to deploy, when you make changes and you want to deploy to Heroku, we need to update our Git repository. So let's say git add all, and I'll say git commit m, and let's say removed initial route. And now we can just do git push Heroku master again. Okay, so it's just going to go through that process, and that should get updated, and hopefully it works. All right, so the deploy has finished. Now I'm just going to do Heroku. Actually, I'll just go to my browser and reload. And good. So far so good. It's displaying the register and login. So we'll go ahead and log in with Sam. Good. And remember, it's using the same database that we use in development. We didn't add a different production database, so our contacts are still going to be there. So let's just make sure everything works. We'll go ahead and filter. Let's add a contact. Test.com, whatever, it doesn't matter. And add. Good. Let's see if we can edit. Update. Good. If I reload, that stays. Delete. Okay, so everything seems to be working. I can log out, and we now have a deployed full stack React, basically a MERN stack application. Okay, so that's it for this project, guys. If you're interested in the MERN stack and you like what we did here, I do have a course called MERN Stack Front to Back, and it's just a single project. It's a small social network. And we do a lot of the same stuff we did in this project, except it's a little more in depth. We do use Redux, which you're actually going to learn in the next project of this course, but you might want to check that out if you haven't already. All right, so that's it, guys. Thanks, and I will see you in the next project.